Abraham Lincoln was born in a log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky, to a father named Thomas Lincoln and a mother named Nancy Hanks Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln wasn't an only child. He had an older sister named Sarah and a younger brother named Thomas, but he died in infancy. The Lincolns were forced to move from Kentucky to Perry County, Indiana in 1817 due to a land dispute. The family squatted on public land to scrap out a living in a crude shelter, hunting game, and farming small plots. Thomas was eventually able to buy the land. When young Abraham was 9 years old, his mother died of milk sickness, and the event was devastating on him. Abraham grew more isolated from his father, and quietly resented the hard work placed on him at an early age. A few months after Abraham's mother's death, his father remarried a Kentucky widow named Sarah Bush, who happened to have 3 children of her own. She was a strong and affectionate woman, with whom Abraham quickly bonded. Though both his parents were most likely uneducated, Sarah encouraged Abraham to read. It was while growing to manhood that he received his formal education, an estimated total of 18 months, a few days or weeks at a time. Reading material was in short supply in the Indiana wilderness. Neighbors recall how Abraham would walk for miles to borrow a book. He undoubtedly read the family Bible, and probably other popular books at that time. In March 1830, the family again migrated, this time to Macon County, Illinois. When his father moved the family again to Coles County, 22-year-old Abraham Lincoln struck out on his own, making a living in manual labor. At 6 feet 4 inches tall, Lincoln was raw-boned and lanky, but muscular and physically strong. He was known for his skill in wielding an axe, and made a living splitting wood for fire and rail fencing. Young Lincoln eventually migrated to the small community of New Salem, Illinois, where over a period of years he worked as a shopkeeper, postmaster, and a general store owner. In 1832, Lincoln enlisted to fight in the Black Hawk War. He was quickly elected to be the captain of a company of volunteers. His company joined regulars under Colonel Zachary Taylor. He only served 30 days in this capacity, and then signed on as a private in the Mountain Rangers. After the Black Hawk War, he was elected as a Whig to Illinois legislature. He supported the Whig politics of government-sponsored infrastructure and protective tariffs. This political understanding led him to formulate his early views on slavery, not so much as moral wrong, but as an impediment to economic development.
Lincoln, a Kentucky-born lawyer and former Whig representative to Congress, first gained national status during his campaign against Stephen Douglas of Illinois for a U.S. Senate seat in 1858. The senatorial campaign featured a remarkable series of public encounters on the slavery issue, known as the Lincoln-Douglas debates, in which Lincoln argues against the spread of slavery, while Douglas maintained that each territory should have the right to decide whether it would become free or slave. Lincoln lost the Senate race, but his campaign brought national attention to the young Republican Party. In 1860, Lincoln won the party's presidential nomination. In the November 1860 election, Lincoln again faced Douglas, who represented the northern faction of a heavily divided Democratic Party, as well as Breckinridge and Bell. The announcement of Lincoln's victory signaled the secession of the Southern states, which since the beginning of the year had been publicly threatening secession if the Republicans gained the White House. By the time of Lincoln's inauguration on March 4, 1861, 7 states had seceded, and the Confederate State of America had been formally established, with Jefferson Davis as its elected president.
Abraham Lincoln was elected in 1861. When he was elected, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union. They were afraid Lincoln would get rid of slavery in the South because of his known anti-slavery views. The Civil War started a month later with a battle at Fort Sumter in April, where the Confederates fired on not only the fort, but on the Union fleet itself. During the war, Lincoln drew criticism for his suspension of some civil rights, such as the right for habeas corpus, but Lincoln considered these suspensions necessary sacrifices in order to win the war. Shortly after the Battle of Antietam, Sharpsburg, Lincoln issued a preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, which took effect on January 1, 1863. It freed all of the slaves in the rebellious states, but not in the border states that were loyal to the Union. Though Lincoln once maintained that his paramount object in the struggle is to save the Union and is not either to save or destroy slavery, he nonetheless came to regard the Emancipation as one of his greatest achievements, and would argue for the passage of a constitutional amendment outlawing slavery, which was eventually passed as the 13th Amendment after his death in 1865. In 1864, Lincoln faced a tough re-election battle against the Democratic nominee, the former Union General George McClellan. But Union victories in battle, especially William T. Sherman's capture of Atlanta in September, swung many votes the president's way. In his second inaugural address delivered on March 4, 1865, Lincoln addressed the need to reconstruct the South and rebuild the Union, with malice toward none and charity for all.
Abraham Lincoln is one of America's greatest heroes because of the way he saved the Union and abolished slavery. Lincoln challenged Stephen Douglas for the seat in the U.S. Senate and lost. However, this got the attention of national Republican leaders. He then continued to win the Republican nomination for president in 1860. Lincoln won the election, but his views on slavery did not favor him in the South. Many southern states felt that with Abraham Lincoln as president, they would live in bondage to the North. During March 1861 of Lincoln's inauguration, 7 southern states seceded from the Union. The goal of Lincoln at first was about maintaining the Union, but he then shifted towards abolishing slavery. It was brave of Abraham Lincoln to change the motives of the war because he could have angered some of the border states. After suffering 2 big defeats, Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation where it freed slaves. With all the African Americans that joined the Union, the war tide began to change towards their favor. During the Civil War, Lincoln also suspended habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is a requirement of a person under arrest to be brought before a judge or into court. Lincoln then passed the 13th Amendment where it ended slavery. Lincoln easily won the second election but would soon be assassinated on April 14, 1846 by John Wilkes Booth. If Lincoln had not been assassinated, there may not have been need for important activists after this time period. Abraham Lincoln believed that a house divided cannot stand. It is unknown what more he could have accomplished during his second term as president if he had not been killed. Nevertheless, he is one of America's greatest presidents.